Mr. President, as we continue the debate on the issue of immigration as it relates to providing a permanent solution to those young immigrants who benefited from the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, the scope of this debate has expanded to include other issues. Now, some of these issues are directly related to the DACA issue, including persistent concerns on our southern border, like improving barriers and border access roads, providing hiring and retention incentives for Customs and Border Protection personnel to ensure that all locations of the border remain secure. Now, other things being debated, like changes to legal immigration levels, truly need their own debate. Now, some appear to have seized on this as an opportunity to push forward an agenda aimed at limiting the future flow of legal immigration. Now, before this idea gains any steam, we have to fully discuss and debate its potentially enormous impact on our economy. It's easy for some to see unemployed Americans and point to immigrants as a scapegoat, to suggest that every immigrant who passes through our borders represents a job being pried from the hands of an American citizen is far-fetched at best. But after taking the time to actually examine the facts, the short-sightedness of this thinking is exposed. For example, cleaving the number of new legal immigrants by almost 50%, which is what the White House proposal appears to envision over time, would initially reduce the overall rate of economic growth in the United States by an estimated 12.5% when compared to currently projected levels through 2045. This is because labor force growth is one of the most important factors tied to economic growth. And more troubling, these changes in legal immigration would come just as the aging U.S. population increases our dependence on a growing workforce. Now, some have suggested that legal immigrants represent some sort of drag on government resources. But in fact, the National Academy of Sciences estimates that the average immigrant contributes in net present value terms $92,000 more in taxes than they receive in benefits over their lifetime. Now, we can only expect these numbers to increase as we move to a kind of merit or employment-based system. Now, I should note that in the bipartisan approach in 2015, we did restrict the number of family-based visas. I think it was from a total of 75% of legal immigration, we moved it down to 50% for family-based visas. But at that same time, what we did was reallocate those visas to merit-based or employment-based visas, so we wouldn't have an overall drop in legal immigration. To look in the future of what happens when the philosophy of limiting legal immigration takes hold, we need to look no further than the current economic struggles that Japan is having. In a timely piece by Fred Hyatt in the Washington Post this last Sunday, he points out that Japan's population of 127 million is forecast to shrink by 1/3 over the next half-century. Again, Japan's population of 127 million will shrink by 1/3 over the next half-century. Now, the increase in lifespans coupled with the decrease in fertility is projected to lead to near-stagnant economic growth, reduced innovation, labor shortages, and huge pressure on entitlement and pensions in Japan. Now, these disastrous realities facing Japan are a direct result of that nation's historically low level of immigrants. As Hyatt astutely points out, you can be pro-growth, you can be anti-immigration, but honestly, you can't be both. Now, legal immigration is complicated, but it is important, and it's worth debating this reform on its own. There may be a strong appetite for merit-based immigration, but rather than drastically cutting legal and necessary immigration flows, we need to work together to provide a way for the best and brightest to make it to the United States, both for their benefit and ours. Let's not be lured into thinking that legal immigration is some kind of simplistic zero-sum game that can be easily reformed without consequence. Now, during the last administration, many of us rejected the new normal of low economic growth driven by overregulation and irrational tax policy. It would be the supreme irony if we were to fix those anti-growth fiscal and regulatory policies only to counteract them with immigration restrictions that affect our workforce. Let's give this important and complex issue the time for discussion, analysis, and debate it deserves, and not shoehorn it into a DACA fix. With that, I yield the floor.